Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking into a source that it doesn't just talk about motivation, it really lays out a whole philosophy for building what it calls unbreakable mental toughness.
Exactly. And our mission here isn't just, general rah-rah stuff. We want to pull out the specific mechanics, the really counterintuitive stuff from this source. For you, the listener, if you're looking for those shortcuts to deep knowledge, this offers some pretty unexpected concepts.
Right. It defines resilience in ways that kind of push back against standard thinking. And it seems built around fighting two big things. First, obviously, is that nagging self-doubt.
The internal critic.
But the second one, and maybe this is the more surprising enemy, is complacency. Specifically, the kind that creeps in after you've succeeded.
Yeah, the source is pretty clear on this. It views that moment you feel totally satisfied, like you've made it. That's exactly when you start losing your edge. Past wins become, well, almost a liability unless you keep challenging them.
Okay, let's dive right into that paradox then. Because, we're always taught success is the goal. You achieve it, you celebrate, you maybe relax a bit.
Sure, that's the standard model.
But this philosophy says success itself is risky. So how does someone who's actually achieved a lot, how do they actively fight the comfort zone they've built?
Well, this is where it gets really radical. The specific tactic mentioned is actively seeking out and taking on difficult, low-paying jobs.
Hold on, did you say low paying?
Difficult and low-paid.
Yes. So someone who's maybe at the top of their field, commanding high value, they should intentionally go do hard, humbling work for little money. That just seems completely backwards from, like, all career advice.
It absolutely does flip the script. But the goal isn't economic, you see. It's purely about psychological maintenance. The money you don't earn is seen as, I guess, a necessary cost for keeping that mental edge sharp.
Huh. But practically, how does that actually work? Like, if I spend a month doing really tough manual labor that feels undervalued, won't I just get frustrated or resentful? How long does this reset need to last?
The source doesn't give a strict timetable. It implies it needs to be immersive while you're doing it. It's a deliberate shock to the system, a change of environment designed to force you back to feeling hungry and humble.
So it's about the struggle itself.
Exactly. By struggling, by having to prove yourself where your past fancy achievements mean absolutely nothing, you're reminded of what the bottom feels like. It keeps that core drive burning.
Okay, so it's like forced humility practice. It's acknowledging that the self-doubt, that inner critic, it's not silenced by looking at your trophy cabinet.
Right.
It's silenced by proving right now, in this difficult moment, that you can still push through. The struggle itself becomes the proof.
Precisely. The struggle is the only validation that lasts, according to this view. Okay, so if that struggle is the foundation, let's zoom in on the moment of crisis, the point where most people just stop. What allows for immediate perseverance?
This is the 1-second decision concept, right?
That's the one, the core mechanism.
And this idea is so powerful because it boils resilience down to just an instant. The source defines it as that specific, immediate choice you make to persevere through intense suffering. Not a long debate.
It's the choice made when every part of you is screaming, stop!
That fork in the road, but like a micro fork.
Exactly, a microfork in agony. And this detail is critical. It makes us see resilience differently. It's not this slow, grinding thing that happens over hours.
It's a flash.
It's a rapid, almost reflexive commitment that has to happen before you start thinking too much, before the rationalizations kick in. The philosophy suggests if you give yourself more than that second, you'll probably take the easier path. You'll talk yourself out of it.
Wow. So the entire battle hinges on that single second. You commit to pushing through the pain instantly, and that act locks you in, bypassing the part of your brain that wants to quit. That explains a lot about how some people keep going when things seem impossible.
Precisely. They've effectively trained that automatic 1-second commitment.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. If the goal is constant hunger, immediate commitment, how does this philosophy stop us getting satisfied, even when we do succeed? It seems to use strategies that just go against everything we normally learn about motivation.
They are definitely unconventional. Let's look at the first one you mentioned, the idea of deliberately capping success.
Right. Capping success. What does that even mean in practice?
It's the ultimate defense against letting success make you comfortable. The idea is you deliberately limit your achievement or the reward you get from something, specifically to keep that hunger alive. If you hit 100% of the potential, you might feel complete. And completeness is seen as the enemy here.
Okay, I have to push back a bit. If I run a marathon, but deliberately stop 100 yards short, or I close a huge deal but only take 80% of the commission I earned, wouldn't that just make me feel frustrated
Yeah.
or anxious? Doesn't the satisfaction of actually finishing fuel the next thing?
In most motivational thinking, yes, absolutely, completion fuels continuation. But in this framework, satisfaction is like a numbing agent. It dulls the drive.
So by capping it.
By capping the reward or the full scope of the achievement, you still prove you could have done it all. You demonstrate the competence, but you intentionally hold back the full emotional win.
Ah, okay. So it's like manufactured dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
Purposeful incompleteness.
You could call it that. Controlled dissatisfaction. It ensures that next time you still feel you have something to prove. You're still chasing that full completion you denied yourself. It's a systematic way to keep complacency at bay.
Which links right back to fighting that comfort zone we talked about earlier.
Wow.
Okay. And the second unconventional strategy, you mentioned it's even more intense.
It is. It involves using negative inputs as fuel. Specifically, the process of using personal trauma and harsh criticism as actionable energy for self-improvement.
Okay, using trauma as fuel, that sounds incredibly mentally taxing. Instead of processing trauma or healing from it, you're saying this philosophy teaches you to basically weaponize it.
Weaponize is a strong word, but yes, in a sense, convert that suffering into massive, almost aggressive energy.
But how is that sustainable? Doesn't constantly dredging up trauma for motivation just lead to burnout or, deeper distress?
That's the key distinction the source seems to make. It's not about wallowing in it or constantly reliving it in a destructive way. It's about transmuting the energy.
Transmute.
Taking that raw, painful energy associated with the memory or the sting of criticism and preventing it from turning inward into, say, depression. Instead, you force it outward into aggressive action dedicated purely to growth, to performance, to getting better. The trauma isn't erased, but it becomes a tool, fuel for future resilience.
So the memory of a failure or something deeply painful, it stops being just a source of shame or hurt. It becomes like a stored battery pack.
That's a good analogy. A battery of intense energy you tap into when your usual motivation dips. You don't just get over the trauma, you make the trauma work for you.
That is a radical form of energy redirection.
Okay, so if we connect all this intensity, the hard jobs, capping success, weaponizing pain, to the bigger picture, why? Why such demanding standards for mental toughness? What's driving it underneath?
Well, the philosophy touches heavily on the basic nature of motivation itself, and crucially, the role of self-pride.
But not pride in the usual sense, right? Not just, look what I achieved.
No, it's deeper. It's an internal standard, a commitment to not letting yourself down. And maybe even more than that, it's about honoring the struggle itself,
Yeah.
valuing the difficulty.
And that internal demand, that need for rigor, you mentioned it's amplified by the context. Something about a shared traumatic past. Yes. That context is often present in discussions around this specific philosophy. And that shared history, that backdrop, it really informs the intensity and the non-negotiable aspect of it all.
We probably shouldn't just skim past that.
Yeah.
A shared traumatic past. That's a powerful motivator.
Mm-hmm.
How does that background actually change the game for what mental toughness even means to people following this?
It fundamentally raises the stakes. It shifts the focus from just individual success or personal happiness
To something bigger.
to group survival, essentially. When there's a history of collective vulnerability or suffering, the standard for individual toughness isn't just about being your best self. It becomes almost an existential defense mechanism for the group.
Wow. So the continuous struggle seeking hard jobs, capping success, it's not just self-improvement anymore.
It's framed as a necessary practice to ensure that the group, the community, never has to face that kind of vulnerability or hardship again. The individual effort serves a collective memory and a collective future.
Okay, seen through that lens, the constant rigor isn't just about personal growth. It becomes almost a moral duty. You harden yourself not just for you, but to honor the past and build resilience against future threats. That really contextualizes why it's so demanding.
It elevates the whole endeavor beyond just the self. It adds a layer of profound responsibility.
This deep dive has definitely challenged a lot of assumptions about toughness and success. Let's try and summarize the key takeaways for you, the listener. They're definitely actionable, but also surprising. First, you actively fight the dangers of your own success with counterintuitive moves, like taking those difficult, low-paying jobs as a deliberate psychological reset.
Keep yourself hungry.
Exactly. Second, you learn to actually use personal trauma and criticism. You convert that suffering into fuel for growth, aggressive fuel.
Turning pain into power.
And maybe most powerfully, resilience isn't this long game. It's defined by that immediate commitment in crisis, the one-second decision, that instant choice to persist.
Right. And maybe one final thought to leave you with, something to chew on after this. This philosophy places enormous value on both deep self-pride and the intentional pursuit of suffering, capping success, seeking
The
hardships.
inherent paradox, yeah.
So it raises a really interesting question. If this framework suggests self-worth is built and maintained through continuous struggle and controlled dissatisfaction, can that true, hard-won self-pride exist without constantly seeking out suffering? Or is that hardship actually necessary in this view to feel like you truly have value?